In this video, we'll talk about Multimedia Science's Circular Motion Lab software. The Circular Motion Lab software simulates an object in circular motion. Students can change the mass, the radius, and the force, and measure the period using the on-screen stopwatch. The objective is to determine the relationships between the period and the force, mass, and radius, and come up with a final equation relating all of these variables. Let's take a look at the software. The first part of the lab allows either students or you in front of the classroom to investigate how the variables affect the period. So you can change the mass, the radius, or the force, and then start the object in circular motion. You can measure the time just like you can in the actual lab. You very well might not want to do that here, but in real time you can just change the variables and see very clearly whether it makes the variables go up, in this case the period, go up or down. So this will give students sort of a head start on what they should expect when they run the actual experiment. There's also a number of questions that you could have the students go to after you've investigated the variables. There are 9 questions, and there will be a final score. And then there's the actual lab. And in the lab, you follow the provided lab handout to look at each of the variables one at a time. So you would keep the mass and the radius constant, and then you would vary the force. And there's kind of a little handy flasher here that flashes every time the object goes by the same place in its circular motion. I find that if you have students do 10 of these, and it's really important to have them start at 0. So they say 0 when it flashes the first time. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'll stop at 5, but obviously they should stop at 10. You would divide this time by 5 in this case, and then you would have the period. Then you could reset, you could change the force, you could rerun the simulation, take your results, change the force, and so on. Then you would go back, you would change the mass, keeping the radius and the force constant, and then you would change the radius, keeping the mass and the force constant. And when you were done, you would end up with 3 relationships. That would be T and a relationship between R, M, and F. Here's a look at the lab handout. This is the answer key. You can see that here's the data. Here's the final data where they plot the period versus the combination of the 3 variables. Here's the first graph. This is what period versus force, period versus the square root of 1 over the force. Here's period versus mass, period over the square root of mass, period versus the radius, and then the final, period over the square root of mass. That's right, nothing is really a straight line here. And period versus the square root of mr over f. And here's the final equation and the final question. So if you're interested in finding out more about the Circular Motion Lab from Multimedia Science, please go to Teachers Pay Teachers. Here's the URL. There you can also find a load of other materials in the area of chemistry and physics, games, challenges, labs, also a number of teacher tools. Thanks for watching.